93, 93, 93. This is Aman Asharenew from asharenew.com. Today we will speak on how to improve relationships. When it comes to relationships, this takes us to the seventh house of Libra, as Libra represents our ability to merge together with others harmoniously, as Libra represents the element of air. So, this is mostly on a mental level, how to merge with others mentally. So, of course, we can say, okay, we must study our seventh house to know how we should best do that. But let's take this a step further. Libra represents a cardinal air. So, this represents the air element moving strongly in one direction. You can say a forward moving direction. That's why Libra is the mentalist, as Libra is best at absorbing information. That's what makes them the librarian, being the ruler of books and knowledge, because we have to absorb information in order to change our lives, especially relationships. So, the first factor of improving relationships is constantly absorbing information, especially something that both parties, or however many people are involved, something that they share a common interest in. So, for example, if it is astrology, a way to improve your relationships is to learn astrology together, learn numerology together, study the occult together. That way, you can see not only how your mind works, but how their mind works as to how they absorb the information versus how you absorb the information. You can see the commonalities and you can also see the differences. So instead of these things coming out during an argument where we discover how different a person thinks than we do, instead of it having to be discovered via an argument, we're able to use fields of study to see those differences so that we already know what's occurring. So we're using information or fields of study to learn another person. Because when you are learning something new with someone, they are indeed showing you how they think based off of how they interpret the information that they are absorbing. So if you are paying attention, this will give you the insight that you're looking for, because when you ask them questions, you can see how they respond. Because how they respond will be based on how they think. You can see the areas in which you agree, and you can see the areas in which you disagree. And then you can make the proper improvements to help merge the minds as one. Because that's essentially what a relationship is, once again, to make two minds into one. But in order to make two minds into one, we must be able to know what we have in common and also what makes us different so that it does not clash. Because what normally happens with arguments, for example, that represents a clash. It is two different opinions clashing with each other in a violent way or a extreme way. And of course, arguments can be subtle as well. It all depends on the nature of the relationship. So, in order for a crash to be, you could say, more subtle, it's not that people are not going to have disagreements, but the disagreements can be a lot subtle, a lot more subtle when we can understand where the differences are coming from and what we can do on a personal level to improve on the differences. That way, we're not putting it solely in the hands of someone else to make a change. We're not going to ask someone else to make a change before we are willing to make a change ourselves to help them in the process. So instead of saying, well, this person is wrong or this person needs to change, we change with them and we correct the errors with them, not for them, but with them. It becomes a collective because when it is performed in that fashion, you are less likely to blow up at them and they are less likely to blow up at you because they know and you know that whatever the disagreement may be, a solution can be found. And it doesn't require it to be an extreme manner or an extreme discovery. It can be very subtle or even blissful. Because the more we understand how the other person thinks or how other people think and what we can do to better communicate based on how a person thinks. Meaning, if a person is more scientifically minded, then we must do what's necessary to comprehend science because we know that they understand science. So if you want to get a point across, instead of using mathematics, for example, because you may comprehend mathematics, it becomes maybe you should advance your scientific understanding if you want to be able to make a greater impact with your words instead of having an argument about one person is thinking scientifically and the other person is thinking mathematically. So if the mathematician studies science and the scientist studies mathematics, now we are enhancing each other because now I'm able to talk science to the scientist and talk math to the mathematician. So both parties becomes scientifically and mathematically sound because you don't neglect your mathematics, you just know that you must implement science into the math. So not only are you coming to their world with the science, you're also helping them to understand your perspective by keeping it mathematical as well, and vice versa. So when we take the opportunity to essentially acknowledge how our partner thinks and what we can do to better communicate based on how they think instead of trying to change how they think or saying that they're wrong, when we correct ourselves, like, okay, it actually was my fault trying to talk science to a mathematician. So if I want to approach the mathematician, I got to come mathematically sound. that will help us to clash, or that will help us not to clash, because you are speaking their language instead of hoping that they understand your language. So you're not waiting for them to get to your level or to understand your language. You're being proactive and you're going to their world and comprehending their language and keeping your language intact as well. But you don't lead with your language. Your language more so supports the language they already understand. So if they already understand science, you talk science with a mathematical secondary perspective, so that you put the science in front and the mathematics behind the science. So when we are willing to put our perspective behind their perspective and then move forward, this is just a simple technique to help us to mentally comprehend others without it becoming a clash, because we simply are worlds apart. We must learn how to merge worlds together to have one expression. And that's essentially how planets are able to conjunct with each other harmoniously instead of it being in opposition. Turn your opposition into conjunctions. And with that, I bear peace. 93, 93, 93.